Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, Super Bowl edition. Nick Suss from the Tennessean, Pay for Good Journalism, live from New Orleans. We'll see how long the Wi-Fi holds up with 400 million people live streaming all at the same time from the same building, so we'll see about that. I am Braden Gall, of course, and we are brought to you by Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. You are going to need meats and probably beverages of some sort. Even if they're non-alcoholic beverages, you're going to need some beverages and some meats to watch the game on Sunday. Make sure you use Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue to supply those parties over the weekend. So Eddie says, did you mean for the sus bomb to cause that big of a shockwave? Is the sus bomb what we're going to talk about today, Nick? Is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, I imagine that's what he's talking about, yeah.
Are we talking about a former wide receiver?
Well, a current wide receiver, a former Titans wide receiver.
Yes, that's true. Technically, although based on his usage rate in the playoffs, maybe not a receiver anymore, but we'll see. I don't mean to throw shade at a former player the way you fans are doing on social media, but that is what we're going to do today because everyone's down in New Orleans. It is Talkin' Season 2.0. You know, you and I have been to lots of SEC media days. That's kind of the start of Talkin' Season in the summer. This is sort of the proverbial end to Talkin' Season, which is Radio Row and everything that's going on down at the Super Bowl. Of course, you are down there, and you had a chance to talk to, I believe, Kyle Phillips, PacMan Jones, Will Levis, DeAndre Hopkins, former and current Titans all over the place.
AJ Brown, yeah.
AJ Brown. See, I haven't even seen the AJ Brown story yet. I'm sure you're saving that one for peak clicks on Sunday morning. Oh, it is.
It's up. There might be another one, but the first one is up.
I looked this morning. I couldn't find it. Anyway, so lots of stuff to get to. And if you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. A la Eddie there. We would appreciate you guys jumping in and having a good time. I have a quick mock draft thought at the end of the show. I actually got to go to the Super Bowl when I was in high school for the Titans and Rams. I'll tell one quick anecdotal story about sort of what it's like to be in the building. But otherwise, we are talking and you and I will actually break down the game for a moment and make our predictions of the Eagles and Chiefs. That is a fun and exciting football game. Saquon Barkley seems motivated, so we'll get to all of that. But really, this is about sort of current and former Titans having a good day. Let's start with the bomb, I guess, which is DeAndre Hopkins, and we've got the clip here. We'll play Will Levis for you coming up in a little while as well. But here was DeAndre Hopkins. Now, you want to set this up from like a press availability. This is like all the players have a chance to sit down at the tables and do their press availability. What is it, on Tuesday? Is that correct? Monday night. Okay. So do you want to set this up, or can we just you just want to like let it roll?
Yeah, if you want to. Everybody was on the floor of the Superdome. We were field. Every Chiefs player was out there, and they had, I think, 12 podiums, 10 for players, 1 for Andy Reid, and 1 for Brett Veach. And then players are just milling around. You're walking the perimeter. You're trying to find everybody you can. I made my way over to DeAndre's table. He was sitting behind a podium. Somebody asked him a rather innocuous question about whether or not it felt good to be traded from the Titans to the Chiefs. And I was like, okay, here's a window for a follow-up. I start getting ready to yell out my follow-up, but as I do that, Chad Johnson walks behind him to surprise DeAndre and taps him on the shoulder. And DeAndre, perhaps recognizing me or perhaps being ready to say his mind, I imagine it was recognizing me, but I maybe have an inflated ego, holds off Chad Johnson and says, wait, what were you asking? And so I asked what you're about to hear.
And here is what he said.
It meant a lot for the Titans to trade me to the Chiefs. I got to thank Miss Amy and Rand and his crew for allowing this to happen, because without them, I wouldn't be in a situation. So I got to give Nashville and Miss Amy, a lot of thanks.
How much voice did you have in that?
What's that?
I was going to say, how much voice did you have in that trade?
I went to, we lost to the Bills, and, there was a lot of stuff in the media saying that I got benched. And, I'm not the type to go on social media and to speak my truth or, to speak what happens, because I feel like everything kind of always passed. But I didn't get benched. That's the first time in my career where I was like, man, I don't belong out here on this field right now. We weren't winning. No plays were being called for me. Not that I'm a player that ever needs the ball, but if I'm on the field, I want to be included in something. And so I took myself out of the game, and I saw a lot of things in the media saying I got benched, and I let it go. But the next day I went to Rand office, and I was like, man, I'm almost losing love for this game, being in this situation. And I could talk to Rand like that because Rand he understands me, and he was like, man, I see it in your eyes. You know, I see it that, you know, this isn't a place where you might want to be. And, you know, we had that tough conversation, and the next day I got traded to the Chiefs.
All right. First and foremost, we need to get you that iPhone 16 with that audio mix technology to remove all the background noise. No, we do appreciate the clip there, and it was it's very noisy on the floor of the Superdome during Super Bowl week. That was quite a journey. We go on from starting with how grateful he was to Amy and Rand for trading him to the opportunity to win a Super Bowl, of course, this Sunday, first time in his career. To I quiet quitted, I benched myself, I took myself out of the game, and the very next day I was traded.
Right. And like, look, the first thing I will say is the thing I said in the tweet too. You don't often get that level of honesty, that level of candor from a pro athlete in a press conference with thousands of people around him. So I really, really do appreciate DeAndre for, again, not the whole story, just his side of the story, but for telling his side of the story as in such a detailed way that he did. And the reason that I appreciate it is because the story does not reflect well on anybody. It does not reflect well on him. It does not reflect well on the Titans. That like, this is an everybody seems like a jerk kind of situation. And like, sometimes things run their course. Sometimes a guy who was good for a team isn't good for a team anymore. And sometimes a guy who was happy becomes unhappy. I don't think that this can become a large scale indictment on the year and a half Hopkins was in Nashville. But it did become clear that something was different in year two. And maybe it was related to the knee injury. Maybe it was related to Callahan's scheme. Maybe it was just related to DeAndre not wanting to play on a team that was miserably bad and turning the ball over and kept struggling. But all of that is to say, he admits that he took himself out of the game. He admits that his heart wasn't in it. He admits that he didn't want to be out there. And he also admits that the Titans weren't designing plays for him for whatever reason you can come up with. And maybe his success rate with the Chiefs will make you think that the Titans shouldn't have been designing plays for him. But nevertheless, he was a guy coming off 1,000-yard season. He was a guy who's a 5-time All-Pro. Like, that sort of cachet does buy you at least try to get the look, see what he has. And when he was getting targeted in those first games, he did seem like the receiver Will Levis was still the most comfortable throwing to. So we can put all of this together. But essentially what DeAndre says is he didn't want to be there. He acted like he didn't want to be there. And the Titans got rid of him. And it's a lot of candor. It is a lot of candor.
So having been around DeAndre just the year and a half, I guess he was here, it is interesting. I've noticed this right away. He is extremely particular, and he's always been this way going back to Clemson. He is a very specific person in general. He doesn't do things off whims. He doesn't sort of do things like even the way he interacted with Chad, the artist formerly known as Chad Johnson. I don't know what he's called now. And to go back to you was intentional. He warms up at practice in a different way than the rest of the team, intentionally. Everything is intentional, and because you're an all-pro, you sort of get the leeway to do that. And that's why I agree. I appreciate everything he said because he's being honest, and the candor is appreciated. But I also believe everything he says. Now, I agree with you. It's just his part of the story, but he's not normally he's not frivolous with words. He's very specific when he talks. And so
if you guys have never been caught in a stare down with DeAndre Hopkins, that dude is the most intense eye contact athlete I have ever covered. That dude will not move off of you.
You know who else is like that? Roman Yossi is like that.
Is he? Oh, cool.
And the problem is that Roman Yossi is too good looking to stare that long at. Like it's
DeAndre you have Hopkins, to one of Nashville's top 50 most eligible singles, if I remember right.
He's big into the fashion world, always has been, even going back to Clemson. So very fashionable individual, both very handsome, but like you can't stare them directly in the eyes when they're that intense with you. Anyway, what I find interesting is I think his perspective, he's being honest about his perspective. If you look at the just straight up numbers, 5 games with the Titans, 21 targets, that's 4.2 per game. However, the first 2, he only got 3 targets were, I assume, still he wasn't playing very many snaps because of the injury. And so the 3 games, and I think Eddie already pointed this out in the comments, like he had 17 targets the 3 games prior to the Buffalo game. And to your point, it does not reflect well that he just was like, I don't have the passion for the game anymore. I'm going to take myself out. That's quitting. And I don't want to make too much of it because the team was bad and it was a blowout and the game was out of hand and it's not going to I don't think it's an indictment of his character, but it certainly doesn't reflect well. I think I think you can look at Ran and Amy and say it reflects well that you did something good for your player. I think that's okay. I think it's interesting that Ran was so fast and so quick to do it. That's what was interesting to me, is that I had a conversation with this person I have respect for. We have a relationship, and the very next day I do him the thing. Now it does benefit the Titans technically. But it felt through his comments about the story, it felt very rushed, in my opinion. I don't know what that means. I don't want to litigate Rand Carthon's ability to do the job or not. Like, we've done that enough. But it is kind of that was the interesting point to me, was how fast he got it turned around.
But we also do have literal timeline receipts here. He was traded on a Wednesday. So even if he had that conversation on the Tuesday, there was still cushion and fallout. Like, this was not they get back to Nashville 10 p.m. on Sunday and he was out by 6 a.m. Monday. Like, there was a cushion, and the conversation, I believe him that it happened on a Tuesday and he was traded the next day. But that does not mean that the Titans took 2 days off to not discuss DeAndre taking himself out of a game.
Here's my I'm going to call this informed speculation, which is like my favorite type of like narrative nonfiction writing that like Michael Lewis likes to do. Informed speculation, and or Walter Isaacson does a lot of that as well. Just not on Elon. That was a bad book. Anyway, I would say that the coaching staff wasn't all that disappointed. That's what I would say. That he's a good player. He's a solid athlete, a good member of the locker room. But if we can get something for him and open up some space for some other players, make him happy, make us happy. Like, I don't think the coaching staff was too devastated by all of this, and I don't think they're very surprised probably by DeAndre Hopkins' comments here. It would be my guess. You
guys know that I am not a very speculative person. I do not like reporting things secondhand and third hand. So I'm going to violate my rule here.
Ooh.
Second or third hand, I don't necessarily think this trade was decided on Wednesday. Like, I think this was something that was perhaps in the works that week.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't matter. Like, if Rand made the call on Wednesday and the Chiefs said, hell yeah, or if Rand made the call on Tuesday and they spent 12 hours to think about it, it fundamentally doesn't matter. But, like, let's not be naive to think that NFL trades are you submit an offer and there's a 30-second clock and they're like, accept. Like, there was time to this.
Yeah. And that's my thing, is like, if it had happened in like a one phone call, I'd like to be like, and even then, if you want to be critical of Rand's handling of this, it's sort of like, what's the point? They let him go because they didn't want him to do that anymore. And so we can't, like, it's not really like, if the coaching staff's okay, I think DeAndre Hopkins, stepping back as a Titans fan, just as a football fan, it would be nice to see DeAndre Hopkins win a Super Bowl. I think that's fine. I have no problem with anybody saying he's a worthy player to get a ring. He deserves it. One of the better receivers of our generation. Totally cool. And honestly, I think, to Eddie's point, if he had just said, and I think the Hot Read guys said this on their show, Stoney and JT, it's like, look, like, if you just want to be like, look, I'm really like, this is hard to do because the team isn't good and I'm not being utilized the way I'd like to be utilized. I'd like to chase a ring, and could you please trade me to a contender? I mean, that's what Myles Garrett's doing right now.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's that big of a deal. The line when there's just certain magic words in sports, Nick, especially in football. I took myself out of the game is just not a phrase that anybody ever is going to like. It's just, context aside, it's just one of those phrases that like rattles people.
But enough about Anthony Richardson.
So anyway, there you go. DeAndre Hopkins, we'll see what happens. By the way, 3 targets, 1 reception, 11 yards in 2 playoff games.
But also worth noting, for whatever people want to care about, among Chiefs wide receivers, who played 5 or more games this season, DeAndre leads the team in success rate. So when the team does in fact target him, it is usually a successful play. That does not mean that it will always be that way. But
I have a few shekels on a DeAndre Hopkins anytime touchdown in the Super Bowl, for sure.
That very much could happen.
59 targets in 10 games with the Chiefs, so 5.9 per game. That is 1.7 more targets per game for whatever it's worth, if you'd like to. But again, not used very much in the playoffs, so load management for DeAndre Hopkins. Who knows? Okay. All right, let's go to Will Levis here, and then we'll go to all the former Titans: PacMan Jones, Kyle Phillips, AJ Brown. We'll do all that. Yeah, Brinkerhead Snake. I'm with you. He's going to score. I've got Pacheco, I think. I've got Pacheco, and I've got Hopkins, and I think I've got Dallas Goedert. Goddard. I always go off the board with any. Oh, there you go. Our internet's spotty today. Okay, let's hear from Will Levis. This is a combination of all of his answers, of course. He talked about the offseason and what he's doing in the offseason. He talked about meeting Mike Borgonzi and having his conversation with Mike Borgonzi, also competing for the job, what he wants to learn about this first season. So a lot of stuff here. This is about a minute and a half, and should be more. You should be able to hear this one a little bit better. But here was Will Levis. This is from Jim Wyatt, of course, down at the Super Bowl.
Taking the good with the bad and making sure that I'm taking note of all the things that happened, and most importantly trying to clean up the things that could have made the season go a little smoother if I were able to clean up beforehand. So a lot of good, a lot of things that I think I was able to improve on from last year, and a lot of stuff that I know is up to the level of what needs to happen as an NFL quarterback, and a lot of throws too that a lot of NFL quarterbacks weren't able to make, and I think that those plays give me the confidence to go and improve on the things that I need to propel me further in this league. So I'm looking forward to actually meeting him in person when I get back in the building next week, and then yeah, it was cool just hitting him back and forth. The first thing I noticed was the 617 area code, so that's close to my heart. So had a little talk there, but yeah, seems like a great dude. Obviously he's done some amazing things with the Chiefs, and looking forward to getting to know him and seeing what he's got planned and what he sees for the vision of this team. It doesn't change the process. I feel like I think I have a really good schedule and outlook on this next couple months before we start up OTAs, and I'm going to put myself in a great position to be healthy and be ready to play, and hopefully I can do whatever I can to show them that I can and should still be the quarterback for this team. And I feel like it's in their best interest, and they got to do their due diligence to make sure that they know who's out there and evaluate who they feel like they should evaluate. So it doesn't offend me at all, and I know going 3-14 doesn't get you your job security any year and for any team. So I know how it goes, and all I can do is put my head down and work to again show them that I can still be this team's quarterback.
So saying all the right things there, Will Levis, except for the one the one I didn't like was where you can tell in the middle of the sentence he's like, oh, I probably shouldn't say this, which is where he talked about, there's a lot of throws other NFL quarterbacks can't make. And to be fair, he's got a huge arm. He can make a lot of throws. But other than that, saying all the right things, meeting Mike Borgonzi. What was your takeaway from Will Levis's, I guess, availability, whatever you want to call it, at the Super Bowl?
It's not too different from what he was saying in locker room cleanout day. Like, Will's at a point where he knows he is in limbo. He admitted it. It makes sense for the Titans to be looking for other quarterbacks. Yeah. He is not a dumb person. Like, Will is very savvy, very aware, not just of what he needs to do, but what other people are saying. So I think that savvy and that awareness leads to him. This isn't resignation. This isn't saying he's going to stop trying, but he is aware that he did not stamp himself as the Titans quarterback of the future. He's not counting himself out, but it doesn't seem like he's demanding a trade either. No. Like, yeah. I don't think that what he said changes much of anything about what his position is. I think that there's an understanding there. I think that it is both plausible that year 2 in a system for the first time since he was 19 is going to benefit him, and he's going to be able to improve just as much as it's plausible that they're going to get somebody who they deem better than him, and they're not going to need him to show that he's improved. And both things can happen in concert with each other.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, Will Levis is the best quarterback on the roster. Mm-hmm. And has an inside track to start, because if they go sign a free agent who's really low on the totem pole, and I'm talking about the Jacoby Brissett's of the world, there's a really good chance that, to your point, in year 2 of the system, he works his way into the starting role and maybe learns from a dependable backup. If they don't draft a quarterback number 1 overall, or trade down and don't draft one, there's another benchmark where he can exhale and say, look, if they go get, if it's a backup if they draft Kyle McCord in the 5th round and it's Kyle McCord and Will Levis, well, Will Levis is going to start probably. So there's still multiple paths to him starting for most of the season for the Tennessee Titans. There's also a chance they go sign Derek Carr or draft Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. So at that moment, then there's a large decision that he has to make.
Sure.
And Brinkerhead Snake says Levis feels like the ex-girlfriend who has her name on the lease. It's over, but they still have to coexist for now. 2 more years on that lease.
Yeah,
for the record. So
the simplest way to say it, if we're putting it in betting terms, is if you looked at the odds right now of Will Levis versus the field, who will be the Titans starting quarterback next year, the field has better odds. But if you say who currently individually has the best odds, it has to be Levis.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree with that. That's a great way to explain it. Speaking of Super Bowl prop bets, so I do appreciate that. Although I don't think I can get fat guy touchdown anymore in a Super Bowl prop bet, which is really frustrating. That's my favorite bet every year. Tom Brady almost made me a ton of money when he threw that pass for the Bucs to the offensive lineman. He dropped it in the back of the end zone. People don't forget, Nick. Make sure you swing by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue when you are getting ready for your party on Sunday. Or if you just want to go grab a great bite to eat on Friday or Saturday, 11 to 3, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Sinkers Beverages for all your needs. And just a reminder, because I don't know why we have to keep reminding each other of this in 2025, but if you are at a Super Bowl party, don't get in your car, search Uber Eats, Sinkers Beverages, and have them deliver it to you, deliver it to your house, and be safe and be smart. And don't make any mistakes, please, on Sunday. Okay, just don't be smart. Don't be dumb. That's all. That's all. Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue on Sunday. Get it all beforehand, and if you need some more, search Uber Eats for Sinkers Beverages. Okay. All right. Who else? Who was more interesting to you? AJ Brown, Kyle Phillips, PacMan Jones. Any other former Titans that are down there? Who's the most interesting to you?
I mean, Pac is just by his nature an interesting fella. And if you guys have not read the interview I had with him, Tennessean.com, he had some realistically inflammatory things to say about the Tennessee Titans of the present day. I did not delve into his past. I think he had very little interest in delving into his past. But
shocking.
We spoke about the present, and his fairly direct quote was, "Ain't got no receivers, ain't got no quarterback, subpar defense. Titans need some help," which is a succinct way to distill what's going on. Had he mentioned right tackle, I think he would have summed up 3 months of talk radio. Like that is
in 2 or 3 sentences that weren't complete sentences.
that is a fair way to distill what's with the Titans, and that was 2 minutes he didn't have to give me. So again, thankful that he shared his time. And if y'all want to hear him speak on a more long form way, he has a show somewhere on the internet.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated by that perspective.
I thought the get rid of the identity, the running back, was an interesting, like sort of the start of that quote was that's how we started it. And while on it's like I'm kind of torn on that. I'm sure Titans fans are torn on that because so many great memories with Earl Campbell and Derrick Henry and Chris Johnson and Eddie George are baked into the identity and the fabric of the organization. And it's okay to be romantic about that. It's also okay to be pragmatic and realistic about ain't got no quarterback, ain't got no receivers. And just say, well, it's 2025. That's how the game is played these days. And so I don't think he said anything. To your point, I think it's right. It's accurately inflammatory.
Yeah.
Or whatever you said.
Well, let's say it for the 400th time, guys. The Titans did not get rid of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had a choice to return and did not. Now, could the Titans have pursued harder? Could the Titans have hired a coach that would have leaned more into Derrick's strength? All of that is plausible. But Derrick Henry said goodbye before Mike Vrabel was fired. He grabbed a microphone on the field. So, let's just say it. The Titans did change their identity. There is no denying that they went from a team that was built around, we have Derrick Henry and you don't, to a team that was, we don't have Derrick Henry either. That is changing your identity. Yes, are the Titans bad because they changed their identity? causation correlation. We can discuss that. That could be a whole hour in the off season if we have time. But the fundamental point is him pointing out, PacMan pointing out, the no receivers, no quarterback, subpar defense is probably more the reason why they went 3-14 this year than they got rid of Derrick Henry.
And honestly, Calvin Ridley's among the most talented receivers this organization has ever had. They have also had AJ Brown recently.
Yes,
drafted and played AJ Brown. So it's not like it. To me, it's the quarterback. Like it's more about the quarterback and the coach that wants to lean on the quarterback. Because I'm looking at the Chiefs and it's like Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. That's all you need. You need a guy literally off the street and like a 5th or 6th round pick. And you can win a Super Bowl if you've got the quarterback and the receivers. And frankly, they didn't even have the receivers last year, frankly.
Because I love just truly being a miser and being hated, I did a mock draft this week where I had the Chiefs trading up and Genty. Why not?
That'd be great. They don't need him, but
they don't need him. What do they need? They keep winning Super Bowls. What do they need?
They need to replace whoever's going to get hurt at the end of next season. That's how good they are. They're like, we're going to lose a right tackle next year in week 14. We got to replace that guy now. Like, that's how good that front office is. But you know what? Maybe the Titans have the guy that did all of that. Maybe Mike Borgonzi's the reason.
I asked Clark Hunt very directly, what did Mike Borgonzi do? And he did not give a direct answer.
That could be good or bad. Who knows? All I had in my head there was South Park. What did Mike Borgonzi do? That's all I've got in my head.
Yeah, I have more recently asked a question of the Chiefs owner than any other NFL owner.
Okay. Stoney, good to see you, my guy. Glad you're feeling better, by the way. Go check out the Hot Read podcast and F Words if you're a trader. The time is now for the Chiefs to trade up and draft Cam Ward. They're preparing for life.
I will tease this. I have a feeling we're going to be talking about the story next week. But one of the things I have been doing on Radio Row is polling as many random people as I can about what the Titans should do at number 1. So next week, when that story is complete, we will have plenty of time to talk about Cam Ward and the other options, including PacMan Jones. I have a full opinion from PacMan on this.
So we are not even midway through February, and Titans fans are already tired of Titans experts telling you what we think they should do with number 1. We now need random people on Radio Row to tell us what.
Random people, as in they are all famous.
Fair enough.
I'm not walking up to
Taylor Swift's. You get Taylor Swift's opinion.
I'm not walking up to Detroit radio hosts and being like, "Hey, what do you think?" They probably have really informed opinions, but I am trying to like actual experts.
I would like to know what Taylor Swift thinks the Titans should do with number 1 pick. I would genuinely like to hear her answer.
She knows ball. She's got an idea.
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar probably has a good one too. All right, so AJ Brown, Kyle Phillips, AJ Brown, 2 former Titans receivers, maybe win a ring on Sunday.
Correct.
What was AJ Brown's demeanor?
AJ's done talking about the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah,
and
good for
that's
him.
Pretty much all that I can say about that. I asked him how he feels like he's changed in the 3 years since the trade. He says he is a completely different wide receiver in every single way. And so I go find his wide receivers coach, former Vanderbilt wide receivers coach, actually. And I say, hey, is this true? And he gets a big grin. He's like, oh, yeah, no, absolutely. AJ is 100% a different wide receiver now. I'm like, how? Seems like the guy who was getting 1,000 yards a year in Tennessee is pretty comparable to the guy who's getting 1,000 yards a year.
Having minor complaints during the season about his best friend and quarterback while reading books on the sideline of playoff games. Totally different.
But so they get into the way that AJ has matured in his preparation, has changed the way he practices, has changed the way he runs routes, has changed the way he uses his physicality. There is a lot that is different about AJ. I wouldn't say he's 100% different. I would say 15 to 20% different, and that has enhanced his game from when he left the Titans. He was probably a top 10 receiver in the NFL, and now I think he's got a claim to top 4. So, like, he's improved for sure. But then I ask AJ, hey, do you have any feelings about the Titans' trajectory, the Titans having the number 1 pick, everything that's happened in Nashville since you've left? And that's when he hit me with I wish them the best. I wish that organization the best, but I'm done thinking about that. So is it true? It's what he said.
No, right. And I don't know. He seems like the same guy to me, but I think you can't, like, the type of person, like, and again, this is not a negative. I think you do need a little diva in you to be a great receiver in the NFL. I think that's part of being out there on an island one-on-one with great athletes. Like, you kind of need to have some self-confidence. That's just the way it works. I think that's the nature of the position. Have I ever told you the story about during warm-ups when he was the last year he played for the Titans during camp? TD and I are down there. He's on the side. He's on a third field, and it's like me and TD and somebody else. I can't remember. Maybe it's Kaharski. And it's Tannehill just throwing like sort of goal line slot fades to AJ, just sort of working on some stuff, kind of casually walking through. And he goes up, he catches it one-handed, and he kind of puts a foot down, and he kind of does it right in front of us. And it's just like two or three of us. He turns around and he's just like, I think TD was like, got to do that in a game, man, or something like that. Like, kind of joking with him, giving him a hard time. Totally normal, just regular conversation. And he was like, no. Needs to be on Monday night, dog. Needs to be on Monday night. Like, he was the reason that stuck in my mind was how acutely aware he is of his brand, how acutely aware of where exposure can come. And this was, I think, before the Instagram Live from the hospital room, I think. So I think he's like, you don't read a book on the sidelines of a playoff game without knowing that's going to be on camera on purpose. Like, that is what that is all about. He is camera aware. Very camera aware, and that's a skill for a lot of folks. That's a very big time skill for folks.
I have, in my 10 years of covering college sports, I have fully covered exactly 3 football players who I was 100% convinced were NFL stars, and I was right about 2.5 of them. I saw Todd Gurley. I'm like, if that's not an NFL star, I don't know what is. I saw Jamal Adams and said, if that's not an NFL star, I don't know what is. And he was for 6 years.
No, seriously. Same.
Yeah. Same. And AJ Brown. Like, even on that team with DK, all those people, AJ was the guy. He was the guy. And I put him in that tier. Like, again, I'm telling you about covering 3 SEC teams. I saw a lot of NFL stars. But, like, AJ was in that top tier of there are dudes, and then there are undeniable dudes, and he's always been that guy.
He's got like Jamal Lewis vibes, where he can just, like, his natural power and strength and athleticism has just always been there, no matter how in shape he is, no matter if it's high school, college, or pro. Doesn't matter what team or system he's in, it's just there. He just has it. I totally agree. Go check out the article about Kyle Phillips as well. I thought that was interesting. He's on the practice squad. You get rings if you're on the practice squad, I assume, right? Is that how that works? So. Okay. So there you go. So go check that out. Anybody else you talked to down there that played for the Titans?
Played for the Titans, no. I briefly spoke with Thomas Dimitroff, who interviewed with the Titans.
Okay.
He outlined what he would do if he had the number 1 pick, which is a thing that he does not. But that will be in the story that I published either later this week or early next week. If you guys
give us a hint. Can you give us a hint?
A lot of words. It is a well thought out plan. But Dimitroff said that he has faith in Brinker and Borgonzi and is intrigued by and confident in the corporate dynamic structure that the Titans have defined. I did not ask him. He volunteered that information on his own.
Okay.
This is a former GM who thinks that the structure is going to work. I find that a little bit fascinating.
I think I said this with you last Friday, and I definitely said it with PK on Monday. But and again, take this for what it's worth. It doesn't mean that it's all accurate or true. But I spoke to probably almost a dozen folks in the Senior Bowl in Mobile at one point or another about Mike Borgonzi, and I think 12 for 12 positive reviews of the work he's done, the person that he is, and how he functions. That is not meant to be negative on anyone else. That is just, it was one of those things where, like, it's very hard to get everyone to agree on everything all the time. Like, I don't agree with my mother on half the things and my wife on half the things we're supposed to agree on. But the fact that everyone was sort of universally like, yeah, they had respect for this person. That is of note to me.
Yeah.
And to have a former GM sort of just volunteering that information, I think there's good there. Stoney says, is it a former GM buttering up the regime to get a role in the building? I think they've hired enough guys.
There's only so many roles in the building, friend.
There's like 5 general managers in the building already. They can't have a 6th. Here's the one thing, and I don't remember if we talked about this on your trade chart with all the different types of trades, but to the point about the rebuild plan, I've been, everybody plays with the mock draft tools on the internet, and I was playing with one yesterday doing the double trade because now I'm into the double trade. That's what I want to do. Trade down to 6 and then trade down to 12 or 16 or 15 or 18 again. And I got, just for the record, I went down to 6 and then I went down to 12. I got Luther Burden with the first pick with the 12th pick because all the big edges were off the board. But then I added 37, 44, 68, and 73. 6 picks in the top 75 and 7 in the top 102 is what Borgonzi and Brinker are talking about. And I ended up with Mike Green, Josh Connerly, Jahdae Barron, JTT, Gray Zabel, and Luther Burden. That is rebuilding your roster in one draft class if you can figure out how to do that. So it's not the quarterback, but it's a whole new roster if you can stockpile 6 picks in the top 100. So
you know who I would feel really bad for in that situation is guys like 45 to 53 on the roster right now. Of like, oh man, if they have 14 draft picks and they want to keep all of them, there are not a lot of places to go.
I think you could move that number down the board even more. I think you could go 40 to 53. Like I think there's 10 to 15 guys that who knows, because there's a lot of like the Dylan Radins type players, right? Like Quandre Diggs type players, guys that could be starters that don't have contracts. So we'll see.
Interesting question from Ed there that I think we could, again, devote a whole show to, but you want to briefly talk on this?
Is it fair to criticize if they trade down and make really good picks, but it turns out that Ward is a superstar? Oh, man, Ed, now you're talking about like 4 years from now, in hindsight, what was the right move? I mean, if Cam Ward is a superstar, we're talking a top 8 quarterback in the NFL for the next 10 years, it probably is the wrong decision to trade down, right?
It probably, but look, it is fair to criticize anything. Do we criticize the Cleveland Browns for drafting Myles Garrett when they could have picked Patrick Mahomes? Like we criticize, is the question is if you hit on an actual superstar who is not a quarterback, and then a superstar quarterback is selected.
Yeah. Josh Allen. Everybody passed on Josh Allen.
Yeah. The Bills traded the pick that Patrick Mahomes was drafted with. It's all It's all messy.
Now he haunts their dreams. What are PacMan's thoughts on Cam Ward?
That was not one of the players who came up. I will let you know. He has thoughts on players at the top of the draft. He did not bring up Cam Ward.
I will say this. The hairiest, most entertaining, and smartest people on the Titans beat are Nick Suss and Stoney Keeling. I'm just saying. That they are the hairiest, smartest, and funniest people on the beat. TD, Kaharski, very good, not a lot of hair. There was not a lot of hair. Not a lot of hair. Not
sorry for the brief digression, but when we all went to the premiere for Sam Phelan's Survivor Party, there was like a media table, and I showed up late, and I looked at the media table, and it was Kaharski, Glennon, TD, and Gentry, and not a single strand of hair,
no follow
on it. And so my wife and I were just like, we don't want to make him feel bad. We're going to sit at a different table. The table was full. It was a 4-top again. We weren't being exclusionary. But I was like, man, I have never noticed how many hat wearers there are in this group.
I still have some hair on my head, but it does sound like you're an ageist, though. Not only are you judging people's hair, but you're also judging their age. So it's like you're an ageist as well. So going back to the number one pick, and I did this with PK in my story for paulkarski.com. But if you go back and look at the number one picks, and I'm going to go back to 2009 with Matt Stafford because he's still in the league and still winning at a high level. But Matt Stafford, very good player, very good pick, won a Super Bowl on a different team. Sam Bradford, out of the league. Cam Newton, solid pick, got to the Super Bowl, won an MVP. That's the end of that. Andrew Luck, great pick for a little while, but the talent was worthy of the pick there. But then you go Jameis Winston, okay, whatever. Jared Goff, very good now, but needed to be traded. Baker Mayfield, very good now, needed to be traded. Kyler Murray, pretty solid. Joe Burrow, only one on this list that is the guy. who is the Cam Ward equivalent that you're talking about, the superstar for 10 years. Joe Burrow is the only one on this list. Trevor Lawrence, extenuating circumstances, context is king, but not lived up to hype. Bryce Young, Caleb Williams. That is all guys that went 1.1 at quarterback that many of whom thought were sort of can't miss or surefire or should be number one guys. And you got one Super Bowl appearance. Andrew Luck retired. Jared Goff and Stafford are good after being traded for each other. Same with Mayfield. Murray has not won a single playoff game, and Joe Burrow is elite. So that's 15 years of this stuff not working, guys.
And it goes overall. It goes much, much farther back than that. If we're talking about Super Bowl winning quarterbacks who went 1-1, who won Super Bowl with the team that drafted them,
Eli.
I believe the last two are Peyton Manning and John Elway.
Well, Eli
was drafted by the San Diego Chargers.
Oh, you're not counting. Okay. He never was an employee of the Charger.
Oh, and technically John Elway was drafted by the Baltimore Colts, so not him either. But yeah, like that is the tier we're talking about.
Drew Bledsoe won a Super Bowl with the Patriots
as a backup. Yes.
I've got it pulled up here. But I mean, look, there's some really good players in there. So if your goal is to have a Cam Newton or Andrew Luck or Matt Stafford or Kyler Murray type of player,
Joe Burrow, yeah.
If Cam Ward can be those guys, then the Titans are going to be relevant and good for a long time. But if you're talking about greatness and elite, I would say that there's Andrew Luck and there's Joe Burrow on that list, and that's it. Maybe Matt Stafford, Cam Newton, maybe number 4. But Kyler Murray, we can go back and debate the amount of consensusness that was around each one of those picks, but generally speaking, there's a lot of guys that were, hey, like more number 1 than Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. How about that?
Yeah, I think Kyler Murray is the most comparable situation to this year's quarterback crop. If you go back and look at the big boards, I would venture a guess that he was usually in the 10th to 15th best prospect in his class range. I
have to double check that.
I think that almost everybody had Nick Bosa as the consensus number 1 prospect in that draft.
Yeah.
And Quinnen Williams, and there were some guys that were consensus the best player who were not quarterbacks. And Kyler was the consensus best quarterback. And then you had Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins kind of right behind him.
Honestly, what's funny, Cleveland Farrell was the crazy pick there. I mean, Devin White has been, worthy of the pick, even though you don't normally take a linebacker at number 5. This is the point to trade back. Ed Oliver, Christian Wilkins. Let's see here. Brian Burns was picked 16. Dexter Lawrence was picked 17. Jeffrey Simmons 19. Now Simmons obviously had extenuating circumstances with the knee, but there's a lot of good defensive line players in that top 15. Yeah. That would be the lesson. Is trade break your head, snake. Trade down and prosper. I tend to agree with that. All right. I think that wraps up most everything from the Super Bowl. Check out all the stuff coming from Nick Suss on the Tennessean.com. Pay for good journalism, Sinkers Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Quickly, why I believe the Eagles are going to win. I think they're on a mission. I don't. It's stupid to bet against the Chiefs. I'm not rooting for the Eagles. I'm rooting for overtime. I want to see a great game. But for some reason, I think this line of scrimmage football game thing we like to watch will be predicated on the line of scrimmage. And I think the Eagles are far better in both of those spots. It's how they beat the Patriots with the backup quarterback. I think they do it again this year. I think they win the whole thing. Jalen Hurts, the Jalen Hurts revenge tour complete.
Yeah, I have had exactly 3 policies in my adult life. Number 1, I do not pick against the New England Patriots. Number 2, I do not pick against Nick Saban's Alabama. And number 3, I do not pick against Patrick Mahomes' Chiefs. I do not think the Chiefs are the better team. Every single thing that my logic brain tells me that the Eagles are the superior team and win the matchups. If you look at get into the next gen stats about the things the Chiefs do well, those tend to be the things that Eagles are best at neutralizing. Everything about this game points to the Eagles having the advantage. I'm not going to pick against them. Just not going to pick against them.
So Brady lost 3 Super Bowls, right?
That sounds right. 2 to the Giants and 1 to the Eagles.
Okay. So that's 3 times you would have been wrong. Saban lost 2 national championship games, I believe.
1 to Georgia and
1 to Clemson.
1 to Clemson, yeah.
So 5 times you would have been wrong.
Correct.
Following your adult rules. And I think Mahomes has lost, of course, a Super Bowl in a game that really conflicted your rules.
Correct. That was an impossible situation.
It was Brady versus Mahomes. So there you go. So look, I said it on Monday. I don't know why I'm feeling this way. Obviously, Vegas agrees. They got the point spread pretty low. I think there is a take the air out of the ball, run the clock down. We're going to power defense. Their last 6 top 40 picks, the Eagles are all on defense, like most of them from Georgia, and they're all going to be very, very. I just think the defense is way too good. They showed it against the Packers in the first game of the playoffs, and their defense has not let up every step of the way. I don't know why their defense would stop on Sunday.
I sat in yesterday on a panel that the NFL was hosting. Stoney would have been in his absolute element, like a next-gen stats analytics panel on how to look at the game. And Greg Olson was speaking on it.
No pants.
Greg Olson was speaking on it, and he said something that I'm sure has been said. I'm sure a lot of people have heard, but I think is really indicative of why the Eagles are such a strong team right now, which is if the Eagles are 3rd and 5 or beyond, 3rd and 7, 5 to 6, 5 to 7, 5 to 8, that range, defenses have to treat that as second down.
Yeah.
Which is such a strong advantage for the Eagles offense of defenses knowing if they get to 3rd and 2 or 4th and 2 rather, they're going to go for it if they're within 70 yards of the end zone. And so you can't prepare for 3rd and 5 as a passing down. You can't prepare, they need to get past the sticks. They can throw short of the sticks. They can run. They can do all of these things because they have perfected a way to be able to just run straight, set up 4th and 2, and get a fresh set of downs. And that is a thing that we saw how good the Chiefs are at stopping 4th and short against the Bills. I think that the Eagles realistically are going to be smart enough to not run directly at Chris Jones, but we shall see. Chris Jones is very good. He can move across a line very quickly.
Not to distract from your very eloquent and smart and logical point, but Ross says, can we talk about teams that trade back from the top 5 picks and won Super Bowls if it's such a straightforward strategy? Yes, I think that's a great idea, and we should dive deep into that at some point during the offseason. But also, hard to win Super Bowls when you're bad enough to be picking in the top 5, just in general. So
again, I've brought up this point before, but since 2000, I believe there are 6 players who have been drafted in the top 5 and won a Super Bowl for the team that drafted them.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Regardless of position. It doesn't happen very often because if you're picking in the top 5, you know who never picks in the top 5? The New England Patriots and the Kansas City Chiefs and the teams that are winning Super Bowls. The Eagles picked in the top 5 one time. They got Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz won a Super Bowl. He was a backup. He was hurt, but the good teams aren't there.
I just happened to pull up the what is this? The 2012 draft. I don't know why I went to the 2012 draft, but the Rams had the number 2 pick in the 2012 draft. Andrew Luck went first. They traded down.
They botched they got so many picks out of it, and they
traded down to give Robert Griffin.
They got 3 first rounders. Yeah,
Robert Griffin Jr. the 3rd, but they did go on to win a Super Bowl like 10 years later.
Yeah, no, I mean, Ross, the simplest example is you remember all the fun that you had watching the Titans between 2018 and 2021?
Yeah, it was
that was because they traded out of the first in 2016. Yep. And that is they didn't win a Super Bowl. So you're right. They didn't win. It's not that straightforward.
But an AFC championship game, a division championship, a 1 seed, lots of playoff games, lots of entertainment and fun times,
The Lions are where they are right now because they traded Matthew Stafford and got 3 extra first round picks out of it. And trading and acquiring picks is almost always.
I would argue, and I would argue the Packers getting rid of Rodgers and Adams and stockpiling picks has helped them stay relevant faster after transitioning to Jordan Love. So, okay. That's about it for us, man. Check it out. I don't have a lot to add. I was at the game in '99. I was at the Super Bowl. I will say, it's obviously easy to say if you ever have a chance to go, make sure you go to a Super Bowl. It's just not how it works. I had a chance to go with my family. I got to watch the Titans. It was also the Ray Lewis incident here, of course. It was very cold in Atlanta. There is a different energy in the building that's hard to explain. It's sort of like going to a college football playoff game to some degree because it feels very corporate. It doesn't feel like there's very many diehard fans. It doesn't feel like a sort of true football game. But on the field itself, while the surroundings and the context and the environment doesn't feel like a real game, it feels like a showcase of some sort. The actual tension created by the plays, and it certainly helped that I was there for like one of the best games ever.
Yeah,
the tension is different also. So while the atmosphere isn't as great, the plays on the field, every snap feels magnified because the whole world literally is watching. So I will say that my memory as an 18-year-old at that game was just I felt the tension in the air was palpable, but had nothing to do with the fact that everyone around me was wearing like a suit. And I was in line to get like dipping dots from my little brother, and like there's a guy from NSYNC standing in front of us. Like it's like, what are we doing? But a phenomenal football game, and I had the only time I've gone to a game with like Titans gear on was the Super Bowl. I had my Titans hat on, so there you go. I was rooting for him.
I won't make you do. I won't make you do the math on this, but I will just say that Super Bowl was either the last or the penultimate Super Bowl that I was not allowed to stay up until the end of.
You weren't allowed?
I was
I don't want to do
very
the math.
young.
You're right. I don't want to do
It was
the math.
bedtime.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Well, my daughters are allowed to stay up to watch Kendrick Lamar. That is for sure. They've
And
seen
next week we will be the first ever Titans talk show. Don't fact check this, to talk about Kendrick Lamar. It's never happened. No one related to the Titans have ever discussed Kendrick Lamar on a live forum. This will be the first time.
Are you suggesting, Nick, that that all other talk shows are not like us?
Correct. I'm absolutely suggesting that, and when we talk about it, it will be all right.
Good job. Well done. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, Tennessean.com. Check out all the other great shows across the network, the Paul Karski Podcast, the Hot Read Podcast, the Music City Audible, all the other great shows across the network covering the Preds and the Titans and college football, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you guys, all of you, for hanging out. We do appreciate you guys in the comment section as well. For Nick, I am Braden. Have a great weekend. If you need meats and beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers over the weekend. Have a great and safe time. We'll talk to you guys next week.